Okay, so let's unpack this. When we talk about critical failures in aviation, our minds, they usually jump straight to the high drama, right? Engine loss at altitude, or maybe that famous moment right at V1.
Exactly. V1.
And for anyone who might not know, V1 is that critical decision speed during takeoff. It's basically the point of no return.
Right. Engine fails before V1, you abort. After V1, you have to fly. The whole calculation shifts from stopping performance to climb performance.
But today we're focusing on something far less discussed, and actually surprisingly more volatile. An engine failure at the very, very beginning of the takeoff roll.
At speeds far below that V1 decision point.
This deep dive is all about the immense and sort of counterintuitive challenges of a rejected takeoff, an RTO, when the aircraft is barely even moving.
Yeah, the mission here is to really understand why a sudden engine loss at, say, 60 knots is so incredibly difficult for pilots to manage. We're going to dissect a specific major incident with an A300.
And it reveals how something as simple as the pilot seat adjustment became the root cause of a full-on runway excursion.
It's fascinating.
The core issue here is, well, it's directional control. At these really low speeds, the main tool for steering in the air, the rudder, it just hasn't become effective yet.
Not at all. You've got this massive asymmetrical push from one engine and absolutely nothing from the other. It just yanks the plane sideways instantly.
So how on earth do pilots maintain control when they can't rely on aerodynamics?
It's the ultimate high-stress test. It comes down to immediate, coordinated physical reaction. If you have to wait for the rudder to bite, you've already lost.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. We have this real-world event, an A300-600, and the runway. It wasn't just wet.
No, it was contaminated with patches of ice, which is, a huge factor. It dramatically reduces your traction.
So the crew lines up, they initiate takeoff, and within just 12 seconds of hitting the go levers, engine 1 stalls.
Boom, just like that. Instant catastrophic asymmetry. And the aircraft immediately starts to deviate violently to the left.
And the recorded ground speed when this happened was less than 60 knots. I mean, that's highway speed.
Yeah.
But in a massive heavy plane that's just starting to roll.
And that speed, 60 knots, that's what defines the entire crisis. Directional control can't come from the wings yet. It has to be a perfect sequence of inputs.
Which is?
First, immediately cut all forward thrust. Second, use reverse thrust on the good engine to help cancel the yaw. Third, steer with the rudder pedals. And finally, maybe use manual braking, but only in the right way.
So the crew, they made the right call. They aborted the takeoff.
Instantly, correct decision.
But the whole crisis, from the engine failure to them running off the runway, it unfolded in just 7 seconds.
7 seconds. It's almost no time at all. The pressure is just unimaginable.
How do you even train for that?
Well, that's the question. And those 7 seconds are exactly what the investigation dug into. Let's break down their inputs.
Okay, let's start with thrust.
Right. So thrust. Both thrust levers were pulled back to ideally. That's the correct procedure for an RTO. But they didn't select reverse thrust. And that was the first big missed opportunity. They lost a key tool that could have helped pull the nose back to the right.
Okay, so one tool gone. Next, steering. They did use the rudder, right?
They did. They applied right rudder to counteract that left pull, correct direction. The pilot was pushing as hard as they could.
But at 60 knots.
Exactly. At 60 knots, even full rudder deflection had, a very limited aerodynamic effect. It just wasn't enough to overpower everything else that was going wrong.
So if the rudder's not working, my first instinct is just slam on the brakes. Stop the problem right there.
And that's exactly what they tried. But this is where the incident turns from a directional problem into a full-on disaster.
Tell me about the braking.
Okay, so braking. The crew applied manual brakes. And here's the critical error. They applied nearly full force on the left pedal and only limited force on the right.
Wait, hang on. They were pulling to the left, and they braked harder on the left side.
Precisely. It resulted in significant asymmetric braking in the completely wrong direction.
It's like trying to straighten out a shopping cart by grabbing the wheel that's already turning. You just make it turn harder.
That's a perfect analogy. They were braking toward the failed engine. It compounded the deviation. It basically guaranteed they were going off the runway.
Wow. So instead of helping, their braking was actively pushing the plane further left.
It was. And in the last second, the pilot tried one more thing.
Yeah.
They grabbed the tiller.
The little steering wheel for taxiing. Why was that a bad idea?
Because the tiller is designed for very slow speeds. At 60 knots, the kind of sharp turn it commands just made the nose wheel skid across the ice. It had zero directional effectiveness.
So to recap, limited rudder, no reverse thrust, braking in the wrong direction, and an ineffective tiller. 7 seconds, and they were off the runway.
And the final report pointed to that asymmetric braking as the immediate cause. But the real question was, why? Why would an experienced pilot make such a fundamental error?
Because the aha moment you mentioned, what did they find?
The likely key was the pilot's seating and pedal position adjustment. It wasn't a failure of knowledge. It was a failure of ergonomics.
You're saying the way the pilot was sitting in the chair actually prevented them from performing the right maneuver.
I am. That changes everything, doesn't it? The investigation figured the pilot was positioned to apply full rudder.
Which is what you focus on during pre-flight checks.
Exactly. But they were not positioned to apply full symmetrical braking with both feet at the same time. So under stress, the instinctive reaction was to just push as hard as possible with the foot that had the best leverage.
And that translated into that disastrous asymmetric braking.
It did, and it points right back to the flight crew training manual, the FCTM.
What does the FCTM say about this?
It's incredibly clear. It says you must adjust your seat and pedals so you can simultaneously apply full rudder and full symmetric brakes on the same side.
So you have to be able to do both at once. If you can only do one, your setup is already compromised.
The foundation of safety is set before you even start the engines.
Now, just to clarify one point, they had to use manual braking because the auto brake didn't kick in, right?
Correct. The RTO auto brake on the A300 needs a ground speed above 85 knots to activate. Since the failure was below 60 knots, it never armed. Manual braking was their only option.
So they were forced into this high-stress, low-traction manual maneuver with a cockpit setup that physically limited their ability to do it right. It's just the perfect storm.
It really was.
Okay, so after the incident, they obviously ran a ton of simulator sessions to figure out the best possible technique for this exact scenario.
They did, on the A300-600 simulator, yeah.
So what did they learn? What was the definitive way to handle it?
Well, the simulator confirmed a few crucial things. First, directional control. Using the rudder pedals, even with limited effect, was still critical. You had to get on them immediately and hold that input.
And what about the braking, the fatal flaw?
The results there were absolutely definitive. Full symmetric braking prevented a runway excursion every single time, and they stressed that directional control is way more important than stopping distance in this kind of RTO. A smooth recovery is better than an aggressive stop.
Did they test what the crew actually did? The asymmetric braking?
Oh, yeah. And they proved that if you absolutely have to use differential braking, it must be applied towards the operative engine.
So you brake on the side of the good engine to help pull the nose back straight.
Precisely. It helps neutralize the yaw. Applying it toward the failed engine, like in the incident, caused an excursion in the simulator 100% of the time. Guaranteed.
That one little detail is the difference between disaster and a safe stop. And what about reverse thrust?
Also confirmed as helpful. Applying max reverse on the good engine, even if it's not super efficient at 60 knots, it still helps reduce that deviation and balance the forces.
So the findings really pointed to a big training gap, right? Specifically for failures that happen below this speed, they call VMCG.
Yes, that's the absolute crux of it. VMCG. It stands for minimum control speed on the ground.
Okay. What does that mean in simple terms?
It's the lowest speed on your takeoff run where you can maintain control using the rudder alone if an engine fails. It's the speed where you know your primary steering tool is guaranteed to work.
And for this A300, VMCG is around. Wow.
About 110 knots, which means this incident happened almost 50 knots below the speed where the rudder is guaranteed to save you. You're operating in this gray area where you need this complex, coordinated response.
A response that depends on friction from the ground, which in this case was covered in ice.
You're in deep, deep trouble.
So, boiling it all down, what does this mean for the pilot? A low-speed RTO requires this immediate perfect response. Close thrust levers, use all reversers, full opposite rudder, and most importantly, symmetric braking.
And it all starts before the engines are even on. The pilot has to be physically positioned to apply full rudder and full symmetric brakes. This incident just proves that training has to include these unexpected RTOs well below V1 and VMCG. You have to build that muscle memory.
It's just incredible that a physical setup detail, how far your seat is from the pedals, can be the root cause that decides the outcome of a 7-second emergency. It really makes you think about the difference between knowing the procedure and being physically able to execute it under pressure.
The failure here wasn't a lack of knowledge, it was a failure of execution, and it all stemmed from a basic physical ergonomic mismatch.
That makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the smallest, most overlooked part of a pre-flight checklist is actually the most critical thing in an emergency. What other physical checks are we all taking for granted? What stands out to you as the most surprising weakness here? The technical flaw, or that very human physical limitation?